Everyone to our webinar, Bridging Generations, Grandparents as Primary Caregivers to Children. My name is Angie Wilson, and I am the Family Wellbeing and Support Manager at Quality Care for Children. I would like to introduce you today to our moderator, Mr. Jason B. Allen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited and honored to be here this afternoon. I'm Jason B. Allen. I am the National Director of Partnerships for the National Parents Union. My work resides in our Organizing and Partnership Department to be able to do amazing things such as this and also make some amazing partnerships to serve our parents and families throughout the nation. I'm a 19-year veteran educator, and I also have the privilege of leading my family's foundation, which is Lily's Foundation. I have a red heart on. I would love to see in the comments if we have some healthy grands out there who are taking care of their hearts. Super important for the work that you're doing as not only grandparents, but also caretakers. So check out the work that we're doing with seniors and grandparents around healthy initiatives at liliesfoundation.org. Now, I want to keep us moving along in the conversation. I also have to do a major shout out and special thanks to Quality Care for Children for asking me to moderate this panel today. We are so thankful to have all of you on. I know that I may be competing with some long-standing talk shows on ABC and CBS and NBC. I know a little bit about that, having been reared by my great-grandparents. So if you are watching those daytime stories that are getting ready to come on, go ahead and send a text reminder to one of your friends who registered and probably forgot to get logged on because we already know what's happening. With that being said, today's webinar topic is Bridging Generations, Grandparents as Primary Caregivers to Children. This is being brought to you today by one of the leading corporate sponsors, the Carters, sponsoring this amazing event. And they have been doing this for over 10 years. So without their support, we would not be able to have such resourceful events as this. If you're watching this, whether live or watching this later on YouTube, two things. Make sure you like and subscribe, okay? So we want you to like the conversation and show us that you're engaged, but we also want you to subscribe so that you can connect to future conversations and get the notifications directly of when Quality for Care for Children is hosting some, again, amazing webinars and virtual events for you. Now, as you may know, the mission of Quality Care for Children is to create a system that equips families and child care providers. Major shout out to all of the child care providers. We love you and we love what you do. We want to make sure that they have the knowledge and resources to not only nurture, but educate Georgia's infants and young children. And I believe that all of us want to see them have these resources. This webinar is going to be tailored, of course, to a very special population, grandparents in Georgia who have taken on the responsibility of being primary caregivers to children aged 0 to 5. Again, we salute you and commend you for the work that you're doing. We aim to create a supportive space where each of you can feel open to discuss your experiences, but also learn from some experts that will be speaking. And most importantly, we want you to connect with the community of like-minded individuals. Now, grandparents, I have to tell you, this is a very personal yet warm invitation to each one of you, as well as family members. We know that it takes a village, right? So we know that you have family members, friends, we have child care professionals who are also dedicated to supporting you in this very unique journey. So again, we're commending you for what you're doing. Now, together as we embark on this insightful journey for fostering a greater understanding of what you do as grandparents, but also caretakers, we will discover effective strategies while also celebrating the invaluable contributions of grandparents in this space, okay? Now, I have the privilege of introducing our phenomenal panelists on today. I'm hoping that I'll be able to collaborate with both of them and do some phenomenal things for grandparents in this space in the near future. Now, as you see on the screen, our dear friend Rainey Jeske is the Executive Director of Innovative Solutions for Disadvantage and Disability. Now, I also have to say she is a certified fundraising executive with more than 30 years of experience in nonprofit management and resource development. Let me tell you what that means. That means that she has been dedicated to ensuring that organizations have the resources to serve you well. So we need more people like her. Now, I also want to highlight just a little bit of some of the things that she's done, because she's done a lot throughout her tenure. She serves on national and local committees dedicated to improving the circumstances of kinship families. These committees include the Administration for Communities Living, Supporting Grandparents, Raising Grandchildren Advisory Council, the Generation United Grandfamily Advisory Group, Chris 180, and I love Chris 180. Major shout out to them. Their impact on opioids in children task force, and also the Division of Aging Services and their kinship coordinators group. We also love them as well. Please make sure you stay connected to what she's doing and also her information that is vitally important to this work. Next, we have Joyce Smith. Love Joyce. She is a fellow educator, of course, in Atlanta Public Schools, which I love dearly. Her content area is in humanities, English, and language arts, what I taught for many years. She is a graduate of Mercer University, and she has adopted the ideology of holistic teaching in order to effectively support and reach students. She is a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, which they have served our communities for decades and done amazing things with education. She is a part of her community and outreach initiative. She has served as the president of the Go Team, head volleyball coach, which is no easy task. She also has been an assistant basketball coach, SGA and yearbook coordinator. Her greatest and most fulfilling responsibility is taking on the role of being a full-time caregiver for her 1-year-old grandson. So that is awesome and so amazing to learn about Joyce on this afternoon. I want to thank you all for joining us to share your insight on this very important topic. So I want to move us right into getting to the discussion. We're going to divide our conversation this afternoon into 3 segments. Okay. First, we'll ask our panelists some general questions about grandparents as caretakers. We want to set the stage for you guys. Afterwards, we're going to ask them some questions that we have received from parents, from grandparents who have registered for this event. And lastly, we're going to pick questions from our Q&A section of this webinar. Go to the bottom of your screens. You will see an icon that says Q&A. Go ahead and drop your questions in if you already have some. Now, remember to leave your questions there and not in the chat. That's why I want to make sure that you go to the icon that says Q&A, because it's actually right beside the chat box. So we want to make sure you use that for questions. And we're going to go ahead and begin. We'll start with question 1. Rainey, this is going to be for you. So if you want to come off of mute, the first question says, how do you think the prevalence of grandparents or grandparent caregiving has evolved over the years, and what societal factors contribute to this?
Okay, so the thing is that anyone can be a grandparent caregiver. It crosses all the, characteristics, race, economic, income, social status, all of that. Anyone can be. And grandparents have long been the safety net for parents when it comes to someone to take care of their kids if they're not able to. The thing that's changed, however, since the 1990s, researchers saw a change in the reasons why children were ending up with their grandparents for their care. And it's moved from economic, military deployment primary reasons to now we're seeing parental death, incarcerations, mental illness, substance abuse, which is related to mental illness where people self-medicate, which also leads to child abuse and neglect. So as I said earlier, anyone can be a grandparent caregiver. And in fact, according to the census, 66% of them are white, 20% are Hispanic, and 19% are Black or African American. But grandfamilies are disproportionately Black. 14% of US children are Black, 25% of children in grandfamilies care are Black. So that's almost twice. Children in grandfamilies are also more likely to be poor. 30% of children in the general population are living in poverty, but more than half of them are living in grandfamilies. So 18% of children in grandfamilies live in poverty. And 48% of children that were living with a grandmother only in 2012 were living in poverty, and 42% of those children were Black. And what does all that mean? We're talking about inequities for persons of color that cause them to not have the economic opportunities, and also on the positive side, the strength of the families. They're very close-knit families in those communities. So that's the plus side.
I love that. Thank you so much for starting us off with data. I do see some questions in the chat. Again, don't forget to use our Q&A section. I also want to say that there is data that is available for each of you all who are connected to the conversation today. Several organizations have information that connects to this, including CASEL, which is the leading organization around social emotional learning. They have some phenomenal work that they're doing with Atlanta Public Schools and many others across the nation. Of course, we have Quality Care for Children and the resources that they have available as well. And we'll continue to keep you guys updated to how you can find more data and resources. Let's go to our next question. This is for Joyce, and we're excited to have Joyce from Atlanta. In your opinion, what are some of the unique challenges faced by grandparents, one as primary caregivers, and also how might these challenges differ from other caregiving arrangements?
I think some of the challenges that grandparents face raising grandchildren is that our kids are grown and out of the home. So we're kind of starting over with raising our grandchildren. We're preparing our lives to be empty nesters. And, we hope that we raise our kids to, move on and be adults and be independent. And so we're transitioning our lives very abruptly to prepare ourselves to raise our grandchildren. And then in some of the financial obstacles, the emotional obstacles that we face along the way through this transition, and also not being really prepared for those situations when they arise versus grandparents or children that's out of foster care situations. When you come out of foster care, usually those individuals are more prepared and have more resources, in my opinion, or from my experience. And then sometimes, as grandparents, we also experience the more selfish reasons because, we feel that we've raised our children. So now we have to get past that part of our lives because we are literally starting over. So it could be a very stressful and emotional and overwhelming times in our lives. But, the opposite side of that, as an educator, I've experienced a number of students who are being raised by their grandchildren. And that was very eye-opening for me. And the challenges that I see that they're facing trying to raise their adolescents, grandchildren, while they, participate in risky behavior. I would just encourage everyone to utilize those counseling resources and research some areas that will support those adolescents for the family and those grandchildren and help them with their social and emotional development.
I love that. The National Parents Union has aligned our kinship care work again with social emotional learning for many of those reasons. Also, to note, you can find this on liliesfoundation.org. We had a lot of grandparents who lost children during the pandemic, which is a huge, feat, whether it was cancer or other, heart-related illnesses. Don't forget to take care of your heart. These are circumstances that, again, other families uniquely are not having to deal with. Let's move on to the next question. Rainey, we'll come back to you and ask you about what strategies or resources do you believe would be most effective in supporting grandparents in their role as caregivers?
Yeah, so I want to jump in and say, so Innovative Solutions for Disadvantage and Disability is the largest provider of kinship family services in the Atlanta area. And number one is that, provider and the families that we work with, what we see is the overall number one problem is that programs for families and programs for seniors were never designed with the idea in mind that grandparents would be raising children. So they either don't consider their unique circumstances or they often exclude them. For example, biological parents and even foster parents, they don't deal with the unexpected circumstances that Joyce is talking about that place these children in grandparent care. And they don't have to deal with grief, loss, what did I do wrong? It's not supposed to be this way, all those sort of emotional things. So there's, a need for those kinds of supports that our current social system, community organizations generally are not set up to deal with those things. These are the hidden families that, in fact, it's called hidden foster care. Grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. So they're out of mind, out of sight. Number one issue of the families we serve, of course, we're serving those who need us, and they often have financial issues. The vast majority of these families are outside the foster care system. In the state of Georgia, for every one family in kinship, every one child in kinship foster care, there's 28 children outside that system in relative foster care. And when you're outside the system, that means you don't have access to those resources, the financial stipends, the case management, none of that. So, and that's because, DFACS, child welfare, they prioritize the placement of children with kin, which, yes, we all are happy for that because that's where the child's going to do the best, do well. They're going to be loved. That's number one. But they're also locked out of the system with no access. And there's no pathway that I'm aware of for a grandparent caregiver once they have accepted that child into their custody for them to become a licensed foster parent, not in Georgia. So they are solving a huge problem for us. We'd have a foster care crisis if grandparents weren't willing to step in, but we're also asking them to raise children on their Social Security checks. And they're worrying about having enough to eat. So it's a struggle. So financial, emotional support. They need help with legal assistance because if you don't have a legal paper, guardianships, paper signed by a judge, then it's difficult to get the child enrolled in school, difficult to get health care, difficult to get what little financial supports are available. It's difficult to get them. Food stamps, for example, SNAP benefits, respite care. These families also need help navigating unfamiliar systems, how to deal with these school systems, how to deal with doctors, legal systems, and so on. And of course, there's this whole issue of self-care is very important for these families because, as Joy said, she kind of alluded to that. It's these kids, you weren't expecting them, and now they're you have to put them number one, and many grandparents put them ahead of their own health. And so all of these things, this is what we do. This is why we're here. We're filling that service gap between services for seniors and services for biological families and providing families with all of that. And it's based on an evaluated model. There's been a lot of research in this field over the last few decades. So we have a really good idea of what supports these families need. But the struggle is just to get them. They're not always there in the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Joyce, how can we extend family members, or how can extended family members contribute to the well-being of both grandparents and grandchildren in the context of grandparent caregiving?
First, let me highlight that, as grandparents, that automatically puts us in a certain category socially, right? So our friends and our extended family, if they have grandchildren, they have the ability to, they have the flexibility to get their grandchildren when they can. We don't have that ability as primary caregivers. So extended families can also be mindful of that and step in when they can to support the grandmother and the child. Also, being mindful of the challenges that child will endure along this journey, not being raised by their parents and not having their parents involved in their lives. And extended families can step in to try to fill those voids. It'll never be filled completely, but being a positive figure in their lives, showing up for them, supporting them, supporting the grandparents because they need it as well. Also, just getting involved in their lives in terms of their education, sports, maybe welcome them on family vacations that they have with their family, family events. There's a lot of ways that extended family can show up. And I'm also mindful that some families are not structured, that, I've met some families where they don't have close relatives. So their extended family are like their friends, and that's okay, and just utilize those people that's in your life who you trust to be those role models or a support system for you and your grandchildren.
Awesome points being made. Rainey, let's close out this section with you. And I want to ask, what do you think open communication does in regards to addressing the joys and challenges associated with the work that grandparents are doing as caretakers?
Well, certainly open communication is vital to have that with family, employers, the schools, doctors. It's important to get their understanding, their cooperation and support in this really vital role that grandparents take on. Because if they didn't step up and do this, the kids would be in foster care and they wouldn't be with family, with the people who love them. So open communication is very important. And I know often the grandparents tell us it's hard for them to ask for help. But that's the thing you have to tell yourself is it's okay to ask for help.
I love that. We're going to move into our next segment, and I'm going to ask our panelists scenario-based questions that provide information to all those who registered. And this is actually from parents and grandparents who have registered for this event. So let's go with the very first scenario. Rainey, we'll start with you. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I became the primary caregiver for my grandchildren. What immediate challenges might I face, and how can I best navigate this role?
So becoming a grandparent caregiver is almost always unforeseen circumstances. It's almost always an unexpected event. So, what challenges, I kind of talked about them already. There's the financial issues of trying to raise kids on your retirement income or social security check. The emotional supports that you need as a caregiver in sudden overnight parent of children, the legal issues, the financial issues, I mentioned, sorry, health issues, your own health is important, self-care, and also that social isolation piece is, Joyce had mentioned that if, your peers aren't doing this. And often the grandparents feel like they're alone. I've seen this all the time when the grandparents first come to one of our support groups and they look around the room and they see all the other caregivers there and they're shocked because they thought they were the only one. But in Georgia, there's almost 100,000 grandparents who are raising grandkids. So, you're not alone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I saw someone mention SON, which is known as Connectly in Philadelphia, and they are doing some amazing work. I want to go to the next scenario. Joyce, it says that I find it challenging to establish a balance, which is so important, in authority and also decision making within my intergenerational household. What strategies can I employ to foster positive dynamics amongst myself, my daughter, her husband, and my grandchildren?
In my mind, if it's difficult to establish a balance in authority and decision making, especially in this setting, then it's possible that clear boundaries and generational roles haven't been established. First, I would definitely have a conversation with the adults, not around the children, so that everyone can have the freedom to speak and discuss and have a conversation about the issues at hand so that everybody understand and respect each other's role. I couldn't imagine not being able to support my grandson or have a part of making a certain decision for him, especially if he was with his mother in the home. That will be difficult. So I can understand how difficult it is in this situation. So again, I would definitely arrange a time to sit down with the parents away from the children to have a conversation, to discuss these issues and concerns, and outline the roles that everyone have, even as a grandparent. And then come to a resolution, but also a next step. And just because we come to a resolution, we need to be able to have a follow through. And as a mother to adult children, I have to often remind my children that I'm also learning how to adult grown children. So you have to find a healthy balance, and it must happen with tough conversations in order to build and maintain these healthy relationships. So I would just encourage you to have a conversation with the adults so that you can come to a peaceful resolution.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rainy, let's go back to you for scenario 3. It states that I feel isolated and lack a support system. How can I seek and build a support network despite my potential distance barriers and limited social connections?
Well, I think number one, seek out a support group in your area. In Atlanta, we have 4 support groups a month. We have a day group in DeKalb. We have an evening group that's for the whole family, separate groups for each age group in DeKalb and Fulton and Gwinnett County. And we also have a virtual group once a month on the first Tuesday of the month. So if you don't live in Atlanta, there's a virtual group you can join, our virtual group. There's other groups too, and you can find them by Googling support groups or grandparents, grand family caregivers. There's also, I think we're going to share a link to a state fact sheet that lists a lot of the resources by states for kinship caregivers, and that includes a list of support groups. And another place you can go to try to find these groups is the Kinship Navigator program, Georgia's Kinship Navigator, which is part of DFACS, and they have a list of support groups also.
Awesome. Now, Joyce, scenario 4 says, I am trying to encourage the involvement of the children's parents in caregiving responsibilities. How can I approach the situation delicately and foster a collaborative caregiving environment?
Without sufficient information, like background knowledge, the age of the children and the situation with the parent, I would say if the child is old enough, I would first have a conversation with that child to see if that's something that they want, and how they want that to look. Because our primary goal as a primary caregiver is the safety and the comfortability of the child. And then you can possibly have a conversation with the absent parent to see how or if they want to be involved. We can't just assume as primary caregivers that, that's something that they want, because we are the caregivers. So something happened that caused us to take on this role. So I would just encourage you to, encourage the person to first assess why you have primary caregiving roles for that child. And then make those decisions based off that. I can't, and just speaking from personal experiences, I can't necessarily say that it would be healthy for those type of relationships to happen as a primary caregiver. So I would just exercise having those conversations with the child if they're old enough. If they're not old enough, then you as a primary caregiver need to decide if this is a good choice for the child at this moment.
Awesome. That takes us to our next scenario, which is scenario 5. Rainey, we're going to go to you. And it says, I am facing financial strain while providing for my grandchildren. What resources and assistance programs are available to help grandparents in my situation?
Yeah, this is tough because there's not a lot. There is something called the GRG in Georgia, grandparent raising grandchildren a stipend. I think it's only $100 a month though, and you have to be eligible for TANF to receive it. There's TANF only, child only TANF. Now that's an important one because that is based on the child's income, and that one is fairly easy to get as long as the child isn't already getting SSI. They're typically going to be eligible for that. Other than that, there is really not a lot. You can, we're talking about community resources, food pantries can help stretch your dollar. SNAP benefits, it's possible if you have if the grandparent has got a guardianship paper and has custody and guardianship of the child, then it's possible to get SNAP benefits based on the child. But if you don't have that, you're only able to get SNAP benefits based on your own income, and which isn't enough. And but this is a tough one. This is something that we struggle with. And at ISTD, we have some resources. We're able to help grandparents with things like utility payments and rent and food when you become one of our clients. And I wish I had better news to offer when it comes to financial assistance. But also, if you're in other parts of the state, I would suggest contacting the Kinship Navigator program through DFACS, and they'd be able to help you find some community resources.
Thank you for sharing that. Rainey, we'll stick with you, and I want to go to the next scenario that says, I am juggling caregiving responsibilities along with my work and personal commitments. How can I effectively manage my time and priorities to avoid burnout?
My suggestions are, first of all, create a schedule so that you're not taking on too much. Set boundaries according to your schedule so that you have, workspace boundary and child space boundary. Delegate anything you can, ask family members, ask your village, friends, neighbors for help. Prioritize those things that are most important and do those, and forget the rest. Don't forget your self-care, and then learn to say no. Those are my top suggestions.
Thank you so much for that. I want to close us out for this segment, Rainey, and ask you this last question for scenario 7, which says, I am dealing with health challenges while caring for my grandchildren. What strategies can be implemented to ensure both my well-being and the optimal care of my grandchild?
So we see that a lot in the population we serve because the average age of a caregiver on our program is 61 years old, and a very high number of them have some sort of a disability of their own, in addition to the children having health conditions and disabilities, because we particularly specialize in those families that include at least one child with a special need. So number one, I would say, is take care of your own health. First of all, don't forget it. We often hear grandparents talk about how, they put the child first, and you can't forget yourself because they depend on you to be healthy. So don't forget your self-care. Make sure you go to your doctor's appointments, and also consider, making some legal and financial plans ahead of time. Because you don't ever know what's going to happen, and you need to think about, as this child's primary caregiver, what's going to happen if I'm not able to take care of that child? Who can step in? What if you're hospitalized, or what if something worse happens?
And Jason, can I
Yes.
piggyback off something that Rainey said?
Yes.
Previously, she stated about grandparents raising children and some of the resources that's available for those grandchildren. I just wanted to bring some clarity on that based on my experiences. As grandparents raising grandchildren, we do fall into the category of grandchildren raising grandchildren. However, for the state of Georgia, if you are not 60 years of age, you do not have access to those resources that's outlined for grandparents raising grandchildren. That's one. And two, in the state of Georgia, if you voluntarily take on the role of primary caregiver, then you are solely responsible financially for that child. So you're facing two different things here. Because I am a grandparent raising a grandchild, I don't meet the state requirements age-wise, and legally, because I've taken on the financial primary responsibility, I don't have access to some of those resources that may be available within my state. So also keep that in mind.
Very good point. Thank you so much, Joyce, for adding that. Our team needs your feedback. The QCC team is making this information available because we want to hear from you. You should be seeing the link in the chat for you to complete the Survey Monkey. We appreciate all of the comments and thoughts, but we definitely want to make sure that we capture this at this segment. Now, that was my public service announcement. I want to go to the next segment, which is Q&A. And I think we've had a very lively chat section as well as Q&A segment. So I am going to pass the mic to Angie for questions from the Q&A.
Hi, Jason, and everybody. Thank you. This has been a great segment. Once again, I'm Angie Wilson, and I work at Quality Care for Children as the Family Wellbeing and Support Manager. We have a couple of questions on our and here I go. How can you elaborate a little bit on how to apply for child-only TANF?
Sure, I can offer some information there. So child-only TANF, if you're a grandparent raising grandchildren, when filling out that application, there should be an area on the application that says GRB. So you're only going to fill out that information. And usually as a grandparent raising grandchildren, you're not actually filling that application out for yourself or for other individuals in your family. It's solely for the child. So if you go to your local state and they have that application for you, remember always select the option of GRB. And it's only for the child. So you're only filling that information out for that child.
It just makes an important point. If you put in your information, your claim could get rejected. So, and that's another thing the Navigator program is supposed to be helping Georgians out with, is navigating these arcane social service programs. So they will help you fill out that application if you need it.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, what are affordable options for respite care when grandparents need a break from caregiving?
Well, we offer respite care to our clients. However, we did use up all our money already for that. So at the moment, we don't have any for respite care. And I know it's another tough one to get. I don't have good answers.
And also, depending on the age of the grandchildren, you can also reach out to a lot of your local area, like your colleges. They have a lot of summer and enrichment programs. If they're school age, you can reach out to the YMCA. They have a lot of resources and programs. Future Seekers is also very resourceful. They have a lot of summer programs and after school programs such as youth building. So that's some starters.
Okay. The next question is, how do you care for your grandchild when your child, the parent of the child, is living a lifestyle you feel is damaging?
Do you have primary custody of the child, or the child is still in a setting with the mother? I think if that's the case, then you may have to, take the initiation of pulling that child out of that environment, if you're concerned about their well-being.
The next question is, do grandparents have legal rights? How can I petition the court to become a primary caregiver if needed to step up and take care of my grandchildren?
Yeah, you can go to your local state court where you can apply for custody for your grandchildren. Depending on the age, if they're juvenile, you'll go to the juvenile court, of course, to fill out custody. And it's usually done in a family court. And that process takes about a year to finalize. And I believe they do that to give the actual parent an opportunity to meet certain requirements and stipulations, to see if placing that child with you as a grandparent is the best decision. So I would definitely start with a juvenile court in your area.
And Atlanta Legal Aid has a kinship caregiver hotline and a program that is just to address the legal issues involving kinship care. And if you're under 200% of poverty, you can get services from them. It's income-based, but they also have a lot of information. I believe some of it is on their website, and that can be helpful to you in pursuing custody.
The next question is, what resources are available for grandparents whose grandchildren have autism?
Oh, we see that a lot in our program. Sydney Marcus Institute Autism Institute is a great resource for assistance with children who have autism. I highly recommend them.
I wanted to just add to that question in particular for Georgia. We have 3 or 4 partners in the National Parents Union that are supporting families who have children with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, et cetera, so forth. So I will make sure that I put our information in the chat for people to get connected and also reach out if they would like to get more resources from them.
Thank you. Our next question is, can grandparents only access kinship via DFACS?
Kinship actually have their own website. You can go to Kinship program. You can Google Kinship program, and they have a form there where you can fill out and someone will give you a call back. However, yes, you do have to have a referral from DFACS. In some cases, not all, but you can go to Kinship program and fill out a referral, and someone will call you back.
Checking the chat, and I think the questions and answers, and I think we maybe there was another question that says or a comment that says you can get benefits through Social Security if you adopt and the caregiver is on Social Security. Is that something that one of you can answer, or is that was almost like a comment?
Yeah, I believe that's true, but I'm not an expert in that area.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that at all. I know that if you receive certain Social Security benefits as a grandparent raising grandchildren, you don't qualify for certain state funding. So yeah, I'm not sure about that as well.
Well, it looks like those are all the questions we have today. Thank you, Jason, and over to you.
Awesome, everyone. Listen, you all were so engaged during this conversation, which again makes this exciting and also very informative. As we get ready to close out, before thanking the panelists, I actually want to ask Joyce and Rainey if you have any final words that you would like to speak or share anything with our participants this evening before we close out.
I would just encourage grandparents raising grandchildren to stay encouraged. Seek as much resources and support as you can, especially from your extended families. Please utilize your resources as far as mental health and counseling. If you receive state funding as far as Medicaid, use your Medicaid for counseling services, for therapy services. Use your local community bases, such as Lily's or YMCA, to support that child, depending on the age of the child. The older the child is, I would try to get as much resources for that child as possible in terms of counseling and therapy.
Awesome. Thank you. Rainey?
So my final words are, just remember you're not alone, and seek out that support. Give us a call at ISDD, send us an email. That's why we're here, to help kinship families, caregivers of any age. Remember that even in the hard times, what you're doing is so important for these children. I can't even begin to tell you how critical it is. Well, I'm sure you know how critical it is for these kids to be with the people who love them. As someone personally, I aged out of the foster care system, so I can tell you it's a very difficult thing to do, to learn how to become an adult on your own. I mean, basically, you're 18 by, at least that's how it was then. And you, as a foster child, you don't ever, I think you're lucky if you do feel loved. It's not usual, it's unusual. And at least the children in your care, that's the one thing they have for sure, is they know that somebody loves them, and the value of that is, incalculable. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Erica, I was going to address your question. I saw it, but I think maybe someone provided an answer. But it says, what resources are available for a single mother who is at risk of becoming an abuser of her children due to a possible mental illness and or possible substance abuse? I would definitely say we have a phenomenal partner that is working with single moms centering mental health. One of them is in Atlanta. They are called CORE. But we also have the Single Black Moms Project, led by Alicia Gordon, a former Georgia educator and also single mother, that has a lot of resources. So again, please reach out to me at National Parents Union so I can connect you to some of our local and also national partners. This has been a phenomenal conversation and workshop. Again, we could not have been able to do this, of course, without Quality Care for Georgia, which again is a phenomenal connector to resources. They are the go-to. They are the connector that brought all of us to the table. We are so thankful for them, as well as our sponsor, Carter's, for making this phenomenal experience happen. Again, please utilize all of us that have spoke on today as a resource. Go to our websites, reach out to us via email, which we have put inside of the chat. We have some phenomenal organizations in Atlanta and around Georgia that are doing phenomenal things for grandparents and grand families, that we like to call them. So please, again, connect with us so we can support you. With that being said, we will let you reclaim a little bit of time, but again, please make sure that you go to the resource page and get the resources. We thank you so much for participating and connecting to this conversation, and we hope to see you at the next one. Until next time, thank you so much and be well.